Hey, my name is Raquel Castro. I'm an actress, singer, and songwriter. You might know me from the film I did when I was 7 called Jersey Girl, or more recent, The Voice or Empire on Fox. And you're watching the Points of Experience podcast.
This is a really fun episode. It's a really fun episode because Raquel is my cousin. So we have a really fun history, and we didn't talk about this, so I'm going to talk about it now in the episode, but I didn't even really know that Raquel and her brother David were in the industry. Like, I kind of knew that they were actors, but I didn't really know what acting was. So my entire adolescence, we didn't maybe saw each other at a family party or two. And I eventually remember when I was interested in acting, I think my dad was like, well, you should reach out to Kathy, Raquel's mom. And I'm like, maybe she can help you. And she became a great mentor to me and helpful. And we worked together and we became really good partners on working on certain things. And it allowed me to get closer to Raquel and David and see their careers flourish and find different avenues for their success. I mean, Raquel has been on so many TV series. I mean, she starred in Jersey Girl with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. She's done Blue Bloods, Liv and Maddie on the Disney Channel. She was in multiple episodes of Empire. She did The Voice and then Songland, where she got one of her songs picked up by her. You know, she got to do wrote a song for her. H.E.R, not like her for herself. The artist her. She's been really inspiring to me, and I've looked up to her hard work and dedication in this industry. And we talk about a lot of really cool things about, you know, her starting off as a child actress and moving into her adult years and having different perceptions of the industry and finding different loves. Her focusing on her music more and eventually coming back to acting with a kind of a different lens and different passions. And we kind of break down our philosophies on a couple of different things, especially this industry and how you can navigate it, expectations and saying yes to opportunities. So I really think there's a lot here. And I got to hang out with my cuz. So thank you all for watching. Make sure you leave us a like and a follow and all that great stuff. Reviews on Apple and Spotify. And I mentioned this last episode, but if you're interested in coaching or consultations, specifically with like voice acting, I'm going to be doing those. You can go to paulcastrojr.com and check all that stuff out. So thank y'all and strap in. We got Raquel Castro on the Points of Experience podcast. All right, so I saw you just put it away, but is that a heart-shaped lollipop? It is. Okay, yeah, Valentine's Day. That makes sense. All right, not as weird as I thought.
I had Valentine's Day the other day with my girlfriends out here. We all went to, did you ever go to Saddle Ranch in West Hollywood?
I know. I've never been there, but it's very, very popular and famous out here.
You're a good human if you've never been there.
Why is that? Is that like what's the history that I don't know about Saddle Ranch that is that you understand that I don't?
It could get ratchet. I used to go there when I was like 18 with my fake ID out here when I first moved here. It was
Really?
one of the first bars that I ever went to, and you know the band The Wanted? They were like a UK band, kind of around the same time as One Direction. So they were like this with each other.
The Wish version of One Direction? Oh no, they were just as good?
Scooter Braun signed them, so they were doing something.
Oh, wow.
And they had like a reality show, but I had met them when I was like 18 years old out here, and it was like my first ever like celebrity sighting, so I thought it was so cool. And then they have the bull there. You could do like bull riding. So
yes, I've seen that on Instagram. Those
were some ratchet moments. And then I actually worked at the other Saddle Ranch in Universal City that now closed down. But that was even more of like the very risque memories of me working there. So
fun times.
Full circle moment.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's cool. So that's actually funny, something you said. And you didn't... I can't imagine you didn't come to LA prior to your 18th birthday or you being 18. Like, what was that like? Or had you been here but not in the same capacity? Like, I'm out here living and experiencing things. I'm just here for certain events or whatever it might be.
I think the first time I ever came to LA was when I was 9 and I was doing stuff for Jersey Girl. And they had flew me out here to do like promo and stuff, but I was with my mom and, I was 9 years old. It was a great, honestly, those times like warm my heart, those memories. I loved them. And then a few times maybe after, but then, my first like real LA was when I was 18. I came here initially for like 2 weeks, which is what I had planned in my head for like a little vacation. And then I ended up calling my mom and being like, hey, I'm not coming home. And I ended up just getting an apartment out here. Yeah.
That's crazy because, we'll get into all this stuff too because we have a very, for anybody here who doesn't know, Raquel and I are cousins. So we have a very fun relationship and history of how we actually even came to like get to know each other even personally regardless of our our blood relationship. But I was watching a lot of those interviews that you had done. I guess it was like the Kids' Choice Awards, and somebody had you out there where you were basically interviewing every celebrity you can imagine on the red carpet, and you're a natural at, I don't know how old that was. You said like 8 or 9.
Like 9.
But was that not surreal at that moment? Or do you even have to, like, can you still put yourself there as the person experiencing it? Or is it kind of a memory at this point where you're like, that happened to me, but that's kind of another person at that point in time? Or do you still have the emotional feelings behind maybe seeing those celebrities again or like thinking about those people?
I think a little bit of both. Like I've always had a very vivid memory about like specific things. And then also like on the other side of things, sometimes I just feel like I was completely dissociated for like a certain part of my life. But I do remember like being at the Kids' Choice Awards, like meeting Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz and Adam Sandler. Like those were like my favorites growing up. Mary-Kate and Ashley, like I remember that. And then there are certain things that like I'll forget, but then when I think about it, I look at little me as like a completely different person where I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Like it doesn't it feels like a lifetime ago, which it kind of was. It was over like 20 years. So
you definitely, I think I feel the same way, not with those similar type of memories, but for those it's so distinct because did you recognize how famous those people were or how like crazy of an experience was that you were meeting like Jim Carrey? Or was it like, oh no, this makes sense. I just did a movie. Now I'm meeting Jim Carrey. This is all normal. Did you have like that kind of recognition, or was it like, did you have that surreal feeling of starstruckness and unbelievable position that you were in?
I think with a Cameron Diaz, I was like starstruck. With Jim Carrey, I mean, I was still starstruck, but in a way I felt I was just so excited to do my impersonation of him from Liar Liar that like,
which is
that
so
was
good.
Like a life accomplishment for me. And then with like J-Lo, when I met J-Lo, I was like, I think I was like very shy, but also like completely like out of my world. Like it was just because I had grown up watching her so much in Selena and all of her other movies that she did. I loved her. So I think it just depended on the people. Like some people I could be like cool and kick it with, and other people like there was just no hiding the fact I was freaking out.
I guess it's a very interesting time when you're a kid and differentiating between like those for some people, like it's like I don't really care who you are or what you've done, and you kind of had that feeling on your talk shows. I mean, you did Ellen, you did you were Ryan Seacrest interviewed you. You did Craig. What's that guy's name? The other guy, which you're so funny on that too. It's like. Yes, I want anything that exists of you online within the last 24 hours, I've probably digested. So just be aware of that, which is more than I actually knew of you. I mean, and we'll journey back in a hot second. But for you, you had that natural star power, that kind of. You had that aura about you where you felt so comfortable and you were so funny and charming and goofy and sweet. What was it that you think allowed you to be that comfortable on some of the biggest things in the world? Did you recognize that status of what you were doing, or were you just like, nah, this is like me hanging out at a friend's house?
I don't think I knew. I really don't think I did. And even if I did know, I felt like when you're a kid, you're just so uninhibited, and that's how I was. Like, I don't know if it was my upbringing or, the fact that I really did grow up as a normal child. I wasn't like sheltered in the way where I was homeschooled or was never around a lot of people. Like, I went to public school. I had a great family, and, my parents were always very hard on me, which kept me very grounded. And I think just a mixture of all of that, I was put into this world, and I'm almost like glad that I didn't know what it was, because I was just so unapologetically myself. And I almost like envy that with myself now, where, as an adult going into those situations, I don't know how I would feel or be because of just life and like your anxiety and all of your emotions. Like, it could be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I look back at that and I'm like, wow, like you just did it. Like, you just went. And I don't really ever remember being nervous as a kid. I just remember like being so present. And that was something that was so special.
Quickly, do you remember when that changed from being a kid to maybe moving into adolescence or adulthood, where you started to feel a little less grounded, or you started to have nervousness or self-consciousness, specifically in the entertainment business? Do you remember like a switch happening? Was it a project or an instance, a scenario, an encounter? Like, was there an identifiable moment where that kind of changed for you, or you recognized it changed?
Absolutely. After Jersey Girl was over in the US, we did like a little like promo tour in Japan and London. And so that kind of lasted from, I started at like 6.5, 7, like filming. And it went up until like 12, maybe 13, around there, of me just being surrounded by all of that. And after that, I just felt a complete like stop. And, I was auditioning a lot. I also had like an opportunity to do Disney stuff that I ended up not choosing to do. And, I always have those moments of like, what if, or what could have happened, but I've kind of like come to terms with that and those choices that were made. But I do remember just you almost feel an abrupt sense of like 1 second people are like, hey Raquel, like, what are you doing? Or like, let's give you this script to read, or let's do this audition, or let's go to this event. And then all of a sudden it stops and it's very quiet. And I think as a kid having to deal with that, because, before I really knew what reality was like, it was almost like a fake reality was like handed to me on a plate. And so I was like, oh, what's this? And then when it stopped, I'm like, well, what's real? Is this real, or is what I just experienced real? So I definitely felt a huge shift in that, and just how it affects you mentally and emotionally, your self-esteem, like your passion for what you're doing. Like it went from being so fun to like me crying because I didn't want to go into auditions anymore, because I was so tired of like auditioning for things and then nothing happening, and you get your hopes up and you think this is the next one, and then it doesn't happen. And I think handling that rejection at such a young age was very, very difficult in so many ways.
Well, this is a great moment to now lead up to that, because that's very interesting. I'm very curious about that transition that you're kind of talking about now. But let's hop back now to kind of the start of this, and I'll start off actually with, you're going to get a lot of compliments here, regardless of what you may or may not want. But it's funny too, because even like working with you, like on self-tapes or things, I've known you're talented, and from afar, before we got closer, I knew you were very talented. You are in Jersey Girl. There's a reason why that's one of the most memorable films, like of our generation in a way, and it's everyone involved is obviously phenomenal. I mean, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Lopez, and you. It's such a great, and Kevin Smith does a phenomenal job. But you are such like a standout, and like it's just so crazy at how young you were so talented, and even working with you now, I still see like a burning passion, which is exciting for someone like me, where I'm like, this person loves it, I'm sure, the same way that you loved it when you were a kid. And you're one of the best people I've ever seen take direction too.
Thanks.
Like, you so quickly can understand something that may or may not have been a thought of your own, which is why I'm sure it's great for directors who work with you, where even just working on like tapes and stuff, like it's like, oh, on a dime, you completely take a note, you inhabit it, you have something different, and it doesn't deter you. Like it doesn't switch the performance up in too much of a way. It's like you take it as like another little badge that you get as like a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout, and you're like, okay, yeah, now adding that to the performance that I already had in place, which has always been really impressive and I've really admired.
Thank you.
You've been talented as a kid, and I've seen you continue to have that passion and talent. Where did the love, or where did this all start before Jersey Girl as a kid? Because I know your mom had pursued the business at some point. Was this something that you, having been introduced to movies and music as a kid, and then her saying, hey, do you want to audition? Like, what was the start of how your trajectory in this business happened?
I think it was a mixture of both of my parents always being very either animated, or my father being very much into music, like always just being surrounded by that. Like, oh, my mom would play my dad's song that he wrote and we would be dancing to it. Or it definitely, I think, stems from that. Like maybe just in my DNA, that's just something that is in me. But I really think ever since I could remember, like watching musicals specifically, I would love to watch musicals, and I would just be in awe in front of the TV and just want to so badly do what the characters on the screen were doing, and the dancing, the singing, and the acting. It was always all three for me. I always wanted to do that. And I never really felt forced. It almost felt like it was just like a very natural shift into what the world was. Like before I did Jersey Girl, I want to say like these music video for like kid productions for like
like Kids Bob type of stuff.
Safety videos for kids. So I remember like
sure.
Auditioning. It was one of the first things that I got, and like I was in this recording studio for the first time at like 4 or 5 years old. They had to put like styrofoam on the headphones because they were like too big. So it always felt very just natural for me. And then when I was discovered, I was in a nail salon with my mom and my brother, and some woman came up to us and was like, hey, you're kids. I don't know what we were doing, but we were probably just like being our crazy like selves. We were not shy kids growing up. And so that was really like the first legit step we took into the industry, where we took that manager's information, and she signed me right away in New York City. And then my brother not long after, and we just started doing commercials and little things like that. And it kind of just all flowed into what it is now. And our whole life has just been revolving around this pretty much.
That's so crazy. So somebody found you in a hair salon, you said? Is that where that was?
Yeah.
A nail salon. Wow. That's so crazy. And I mean, you hear about those stories, but it's always kind of like, that's like the Hollywood version of what happens, but it actually is what happened to you. So you sign with this woman who's got this management company, and how soon does Jersey Girl come after that, and how many auditions were kind of in between that happening?
I would say 3.5 to 4 years, like from when I signed with her, because I signed with her at 4, and I booked Jersey Girl around like 6.5 going on 7. So I definitely remember doing a lot of auditions, lots of commercial auditions. And my mom tells me that we did so many the first year and we didn't book anything. And my dad was just kind of like, all right, what are we doing here? You're going in and out of the city like 4 or 5 times a week. Like nothing's happening. Like, let's move on. And like, I think not long after he said that, I booked my first commercial, which I believe was Robitussin. And my mom was kind of like, see, like, you know her. So I did lots of commercials when I was a kid. I did this like series Third Watch. That was like my first TV series. Yeah. And I was like 5 or 6 around that time, and then Jersey Girl came, and I remember very vividly that process of auditioning. Like, I mean, certain spots are missing, but like the key points I definitely have like a very like vivid memory of.
Did you have to screen test for that? Was there multiple callbacks?
There was, I think, 2 callbacks. So I auditioned for A.V. Kaufman, and then I got a callback with A.V. Kaufman, and then I got another callback with Kevin Smith and the director Scott. I mean, and with the director Kevin Smith and the producer Scott. And we didn't screen test. We did like, I remember being in a building and doing like rehearsals, like before we got on set, and we were doing rehearsals with George Carlin and Ben and all of that. And I think that
Yeah.
was maybe like the chemistry read, if I'm remembering it correctly. And then yeah, we were on set. So it wasn't a long process, but I just remember it's just crazy.
Yeah, I have a hard time remembering anything past like before 18 years old. So, I can't imagine an experience like that not having some sort of like lasting effect on you. It's kind of a dream like, and I'm curious, what was the filming process? Did you have rehearsal, or were you just thrusted into this? Did you feel like you were prepared? Like, was it overwhelming? Did it just seem like a natural progression from these auditions to getting the script and I'm just showing up? Like, how was that whole process digested?
Again, I think I was just having so much fun. Like the
Yeah,
first, when I left my house to go work, they picked me up in a stretch limousine, and I
not
have
bad.
home videos of it. So they spoiled me in the most beautiful
Mm-hmm.
way. And it was just like, it was like a dream. And we were in the stretch limo. We were going to Pennsylvania because we shot most of it in Philadelphia. And we stayed in this like big apartment it was a beautiful apartment that they had us in for like 2 to 3 months. And rehearsals, we did more so rehearsals for like the chemistry reading things. I believe that only took like maybe maybe 2 weeks max. That
Mm-hmm.
memory is like the time of the extent of like how long we were doing things
I'm
is
sure.
blurry, but I just remember being in this area. And then we did like rehearsals for the Sweeney Todd number that we did at the end of the movie. And I remember that we had it was my first time like working with a choreographer. And then we went and like recorded the vocals for that. And I was like in a studio, and it was like me, Liv Tyler, Ben Affleck in all of these booths. And we were just looking at each other singing. It was just so cool. And, I wouldn't say there was too much rehearsal with me because I think they kind of just wanted me to like do it instead of like being over rehearsed. But
Yeah.
we definitely did have some time to like get to know one another and build that like really great foundation. Um, so yeah, I mean that's just the key points that I remember doing. And then set
Yeah.
just felt like the longest like day in an amusement park or something like that. Like hair and makeup, I had such a great relationship with them, and the wardrobe. Like I was like 7 years old, like trying to tell the makeup artist, like, hey, like maybe a little more blush, or maybe she's wearing like lipstick in this scene. I don't know, you know. I was just
Already trying to produce,
yeah, living
huh?
my best life, and it was an incredible experience.
Wow. You're working with Kevin Smith, who is one of my favorite directors of all time, and I wonder if it has to do with maybe just the way he works, the way he creates sets, or it's because, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck are in the movie, but it sounds like they really created a very fun environment. And anytime you hear people talk about like experiences of working on movies, oftentimes the ones that were most fun wind up turning out the best. But I know you probably, I mean, I definitely have been on movie sets where things are stressful. Like, I know you for a kid, you probably don't want to make a young kid think like, all right, the house is burning down. You make everything seem fun. I've in my stuff, I've worked with kids. I've had kids on set, and you definitely have that feeling. Did you feel that everyone else around you was really enjoying it, and that it seemed very like there was that freedom, or did you get a sense of, this is a studio movie to a degree, and it's a huge deal that this becomes successful?
I would have to say, as a kid, I didn't experience any negativity on set.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, it was just a fun shoot. They made it so much fun for me. Even like we filmed through Halloween, and they threw us a big Halloween party on set, and everyone brought their kids, and we all got to dress up and go trick or treating around to all of the trailers. And like Kevin's daughter Haley was there, Harley
Yeah.
Quinn. Um,
Harley, yes.
and it was they always just made it so much fun for me, and I think that was really really appreciated, probably from my mom and for me, because I have all of those memories now. I mean, I've definitely
Hmm.
experienced the opposite growing up and being like an
Sure.
adult in the industry. Like, oh my god, I don't remember it being like this. Okay. All right, I'll stand
Yeah.
here and just do what I'm told. But being in a position like Jersey Girl, that I was just again so spoiled, and the experience
Yeah.
was amazing.
Was music at that time already starting to become a huge part of your life? Were you already singing and like wanting to do musicals or wanting to be a singer? Like, because obviously you sang in the film and then you've gone on to create a ton of your own music, amazing music. I mean, you've been on The Voice, Songland. I mean, music has been, Carmen Sandiego. Like, there's just such a theme of music, even with some of your acting roles, where you've got to incorporate music even within your acting. Was it happening at that point, or did that come
It
later?
came a little bit later. I think I was always singing, but I never really took it seriously. And then when I was like 9 years old, going on 10, I auditioned for my first Broadway show. It was White Christmas, Irving Berlin's White Christmas. And they
Mm-hmm.
were doing it in San Francisco. And I ended up booking that actually, and that was such a cool experience. I had my 10th birthday in San Francisco and got to do this like Christmas magical musical. And that was a crazy experience for me. I've never done anything like that. And I never thought I could do anything like that. So that was really
Yeah.
cool for me. And that's when like dancing really became like very, very much in my normal routine. After that, I like went back home to Long Island and I'm like, I want to do tap. I did jazz, I did hip hop, ballet, lyrical, I did everything after that. And I started competing in dance. So that was a huge transition for me. And I wish I would have stuck with that actually. I had the opportunity to do it
Hmm.
again. And I think even in New York as well. And I'm like, how did I not do that? But oh,
I think about that a lot too, like musical instruments and singing lessons, like things that I'm like, why didn't you just stick with this? Like, just play piano. I took piano lessons for like 1 week, and the guy, it was like, I already knew this was way too overwhelming, but you get past that point where it's like work and you find enjoyment. I wish I would have just, stuck with the parts that stunk a little bit so that I could enjoy it from, being an older artist perspective. There's so much that you would you benefit from, and that's why I always like tell my sister, I'm like, you better teach those kids piano or something because it applies to everything,
I know. And I'm like, not to trail too far off track, but like I'm working with a little girl now and I've been managing her. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, see, she's 7 years old and I met her when she was 4 going on 5. I met her in a nail salon, which is
What?
crazy. And it didn't hit me how crazy that was until I was like writing out like something on like a post, I think, when I had just signed her. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, that is what a crazy full circle moment. And now I'm like developing her. She's with an agent. She's been doing commercials. Now I'm talking to her mom. I'm like, let's get her in acting classes. Let's build some sort of technique. Let's get her into piano lessons. If she wants to sing, let's get her into voice lessons. Just let's start building those like little things that she might think she wants to do. So when she's older, she has
Yeah.
something to like really, really depend on and can trust her technique as opposed to just like being all over the place. So it's crazy because there's so many things that I wish I would have done. Like I wish I would have stuck with piano. I started
Mm.
violin. I wish I would have stayed dancing. I was working with like these music producers that when I was like 15, 16 years old, and they're like, you need to stop her taking dance classes. It's taking up too much of her time. And I'm like, well, why? There's just things like
Yeah.
that. So I completely agree.
It's hard, none of us know the future, and you're passing on that wisdom. Is this girl one of the only girls you're managing right now, or do you have more? Because I remember you telling me when you signed her,
Yeah.
she's the only one you're working with right
She's the
now?
only one I'm working with right now. I've just started to like open up my brain to the possibility of maybe taking on like one or two more kids. It's just a
Yeah.
lot. It's definitely a lot of work, and I've learned
Hmm.
so much just with her, and that's kind of like why I wanted to put all of my energy into her and getting her to a really good point where she could be a little bit more
Yeah.
independent on, her auditions and her tapes and all of that. And she's grown so much in the last 2 years. And I now feel like I'm ready to maybe take something else on. And I never want
Yeah.
to, I don't like to promise people. I don't promise things to people actually at all. Like even when I started working
Hmm.
with her, I'm like, hey, so this industry is very inconsistent and unreliable, and I will not promise you anything. But I think your daughter has something special, and I'm part of developing it and hopefully getting it seen by the right people. And that's exactly how I
Yeah.
approached her. And because there's so many people that are like, I can do this and I can put you here, and they don't do any of it. Um, so
Hmm.
I definitely don't want to be that person. I want to make sure if I do take on somebody, like I can give them everything and more.
Yeah.
So, but I'm very open to it. My mom's doing most of it in New York, and she has a lot of kids there. The company's called Who's That Kid that she started
Oh
a
yeah.
while ago, and it's definitely something I didn't see myself doing. Like it was always a thought, but I. It kind of just found me, and it was one of those things where I'm
Yeah.
like, I wasn't even thinking about it. I just went to the nail salon randomly, wasn't even supposed to be there, and I ended up being there and met her, and I'm like, well, this is the universe, so let's go with it.
That's wild. When did your mom start managing, and like was it started with you and David, and then she started getting more clients? And at what point in your career did that happen? Because you said you were working with that one manager.
Mhm.
Did you like just your mom's like, I could do what they're doing and I'm gonna do it better? Is that kind of like what happened?
It's a tough subject, tough touchy subject.
Ah, all right, we can move
No,
on
it's
from
okay. It's
that.
okay. I think my mom, my mom also had a dream, and she always dreamed of being in this industry. And I think,
Sure.
of course, like we worked with my manager for probably like 10 plus years. I started at 4, and I think we left her around 14. I was so young that I don't really remember what happened or how it happened, but I'm sure my mom just kind of felt like, well, I would really love to give this a shot. I feel like I've learned
Yeah.
a lot in the last few years, and I would love to start my own business doing this because, my mom was a stay-at-home mom our whole lives, and thankfully she was, because she was able to take us to our auditions, and she was able to put the time in to help us learn our lines and do all of those things. If she had a full-time job, I don't think we would have had the opportunities to do the things that we did.
Yeah.
So for that, we're very grateful. And yeah, she learned a lot through us. And then a few years later, then she decided to, like, maybe once we got older, once I like turned 18 and I was like more independent, like, mom, I got this. She started
Yeah.
to like look for other kids and develop them. And I think that that's like the sweet spot for her, because I think when you mix mom and kid, it can be
Yeah.
hard, but when you have somebody else's kid, that it's not that same dynamic, it works great. And like she has a few clients that are just so loyal and love her so much, and she does a really really great job with them, and I'm very grateful for both of them having each other. It's something
Yeah.
she's really passionate about and very good at.
Heck yeah. No, I always know. I mean, I've worked with some of her clients. I've always tried to, especially when there's young kids that are talented. She's got a bunch of really great kids. One of them did my pilot, and he was fantastic. Yeah, Matthew, he was really, really good. I could tell he's gonna go places. That kid. When you signed, or was it after or before Jersey Girl? You got an agent. How did that situation
I think
happen?
I know I was with Abrams right from when I was 4 years old. My first manager got me
Wow.
with Abrams, and I was with them up until 18 years old. And then my managers in New York at Abrams moved to Paradigm. And so I was actually
Yes.
living out here in LA. And so I was with Abrams for a hot second, Pamela and Domina out here, and I love them. They're
Yeah.
so sweet. And then we moved and shifted over to Paradigm, and I just wasn't really like happy with that dynamic, especially being in LA. New York's a
Yeah.
different story. But I was with Paradigm for, I would say, another like maybe 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And then when I was like 23 or 24, I actually moved back to A3, and I'm with Pamela, just actually moved to a management company, but Domina is still my agent. Yeah.
Crazy full circle.
Yeah.
Crazy full circle. Yeah, it's so I my experience in this career happened so much later, but your mom was infinitely helpful when I was doing all those same meetings and having that stuff, but I'm in my, my early 20s when I'm doing this. So it's a very different world. I'm always fascinated, especially when you're doing all those things later. I'm always fascinated. And I got to become friends with some kids who were in the business. I don't know. Do you know Josh Flitter? Or he was like, yeah, like all these, hanging out in the Abrams building, these people who, like, I would see your mom and David. I would see David sometimes on auditions all the time, like, because we would be sometimes going in for similar things. So it was always just so crazy that, like, even though we didn't have a relationship really growing up, I remember, like, that, especially with David, because we're around the same age, similar types, I'd see your mom just, like, driving the car in the middle of the city. I'm like, oh, shit, this is wild that now this world that I knew nothing about, and something that you guys have been doing for so long and you guys had been killing it at, it's such an interesting life to grow up in this industry, and then to see it from, the pinnacle of success, and then to find your way through it, and to have that like dose of like what you were saying, where people aren't necessarily calling you every 5 seconds. What was that middle ground period between where, you know, you're working really hard, you're making these decisions to work, whether it's not on Disney or in Disney? What was that transitional period like, and was there a strategy in play? What was like your goals, and what did you aspire to have happen, and how did it flourish or turn into what you know have grown into now today?
I think after we did Jersey Girl, and after that period of just kind of going through a really weird time, I was going through puberty, and I wasn't
Sure.
necessarily like the cute little girl, but I also wasn't like a teenager, and it was a very very weird time in my life. I was mainly just in school, like being a regular kid, and I would do auditions, but I think that was like a majority. Like I remember more from my younger life, and then more so recently, like the ages from like 13 to like 17, 18 are kind of like a little blurry to me. And
Sure.
I think it was just a weird time for me. Like I think in any kid, you're going through a weird time, but then going from like being a kid that was like successful and doing all of these really cool things and having all of these opportunities and having to kind of come down from that, it was just confusing. And I think it was when I was like 14, 15, I started working with these music producers, and that was when music kicked in, and it was like, okay. let's take a little break from the acting stuff, because I think Raquel is just maybe getting a little tired and a little frustrated, and it was hard. Let's put some stuff into music finally, because it's always another thing that I was very much interested in. And I started working with this production company and doing like my original songs for the first time. And like we did this like B.O.B. cover on YouTube. And like that was like during, I think it was either right before Justin Bieber broke on YouTube or during that time. And
Wow.
so it was when YouTube was like the thing. And we started doing some of those things. And I think that was our strategy there, where we're like, okay, let's go in this direction. And then not long after that is when I did The Voice. And The Voice was a huge platform for me, because it was my first time really doing anything musically in a professional atmosphere. And because of that, I mean, I had so much stage fright before I did like the Voice. I didn't really sing in front of people, except my close friends and family. And
Really?
yeah, so I was like almost thrown into this world. Do you know Lucas Prada?
Lucas Prada.
I wasn't
Maybe.
an East Coast guy, and he was you know the song, and she said yeah yeah yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Lucas Prada. I call him Uncle Lucas now, but I met him in like a crazy time in the middle of all this, and he's actually the person that made the connection for The Voice. So
What?
I didn't even know it was a thing, and all we heard was Christina Aguilera was a part of it, and I was just like, okay, sign me up. Like I loved Christina Aguilera, still do. And I did a Skype audition. They saw my YouTube music videos. That's kind of how I think I got my first like interview audition. Mm-hmm. And then I went to LA and I did the whole process, and it was great. I mean, I will tear myself apart because I don't like to listen to anything from that time period, but
Sure.
you know, that's just me being my own worst critic. But I learned so much from that. I was so inspired by my experience on The Voice, being around so many artistic people. And then I also started songwriting after that. So that's kind of like been the huge transition for me. I definitely needed to take a step back, focus on school, focus on being a kid, and then finding my way into like the next venture.
Were you like, I'm enjoying this music thing and I want to explore it more, and I don't care if I have to put, you know, I'm going to audition and stuff, but I don't care if acting is not the thing that I'm shooting for. Did it just become your love at that point?
Yeah, I think if you asked me during that time period what I wanted to do more, it would have been music, because I think because of what I went through with the acting stuff and feeling so frustrated, I was just like, this is something new and something that feels really good and something that I can try that's different. And especially with songwriting, like that was when I found the art of songwriting. It was almost like writing in my diary for me. And it was such a therapeutic way to like get my emotions out. And I think I had a lot of like pent up energy in there as being just a young teenager and everything else.
Yeah.
That was a really cool stepping stone for me.
Did you have any sense of like training your voice at that point, or were you in high school taking lessons? Like, where did you learn to make your voice what it has become, and especially hearing you on The Voice, and then you got selected, right, by Christina Aguilera. So it sounds like your goal was to go on the show because she was on it and you like her, and then you got to work with her. How did you prepare yourself? Was it just something you had would you accredit it to natural talent, or were you working really hard to get better? What was the training aspect of music for you?
I think at that point, and that's probably the reason why I'm so hard on myself about that period for The Voice, was I wasn't vocally trained. And there was so many people on that show that are very well seasoned singers.
Sure.
So I almost felt like, why me? Like, did I deserve this almost? And that's something that always happens, I think, to anybody at any stage in this industry. It's like the imposter syndrome. And like, do I belong here? Am I meant to be here? Like, always looking for like the reasons why I shouldn't have been in that, particular place in my life and in my career. But I wasn't vocally trained, and you can probably hear it, honestly, if you listen back to the videos. I'm not being hard on myself. I'm being very realistic. But yeah, I think there's also, and Christina Aguilera actually brought it up in one of her interviews. I think it might have been Rolling Stone. One of the things she said she loved about my voice and why she turned around was because she felt this raw, just talent, this raw, like, power. And that's what she liked about me. It wasn't this like overly trained voice that she heard. And I always appreciated that comment.
And well, maybe if you would have been trained, you would have been even more hard on yourself and trying to stick to a formula or a set of things, and a wrong note or whatever might have thrown you off. I think there is something to be said, especially to the credit of your success as an actress, like especially getting credit booking an amazing role with amazing people and getting selected on The Voice. I mean, they didn't know who you were before they turned around. You seem like you just have this raw talent, and it's definitely apparent in your music writing. So where do you think all that passion comes from in this, like you have a fire, I think, about you, and it's funny, I see it in your auditions, I see it in your work. What does that come from? Is it a thirst for life? Is it a passion for the art? Is it expression? What is so important to you about doing all of this stuff?
That's a great question. And I really think as I get older, I'm realizing I love telling stories. Like, I'm a talker. I'm a very animated talker. I can't tell short stories. I have to give every single detail.
Me either.
I'm like, long story short, and it ended up being, an hour conversation. But I think there's something so special about that. I'm also very overly honest, as you can tell. Like, and I think that all of those things, you need to be vulnerable, you need to be sensitive, you need to be honest to be a creative. Because whether you're writing a song, whether you're singing a song that you didn't write, whether you're playing a character, like, you have to find that, like, the vulnerability, the real, like, the root of whatever you're talking about. And you need to make other people feel that in you. And I think that's something that I enjoy so much. And I also think it's because sometimes I struggle with just being myself in front of other people, that when I could do something, whether it's writing a song behind closed doors or using the mask of a character to portray emotions that I felt, it almost feels easier to do it that way. And it feels like I've finished auditions sometimes where I had to like lose my mind. And I really love things like that, where like almost like at the end of that take, you're like hyperventilating because it gets you so like in it. Like,
I had one of those today.
Oh my God. If there's something about that adrenaline rush that I'm like, man, like, that's what I want to do. There's the adrenaline rush of being on stage in front of people and singing your heart out, or the adrenaline rush of like writing a song and coming up with this line that you're like, where did this come from? You almost like black out. Like, those are the things that like really, get me going. And I think that's why it's like addictive to be in this industry.
I know it's hard to explain this to someone who's removed, because like what we're just, what you're talking about, and it's kind of what I was thinking about today. I had a scene I had to do where basically to boil it down without giving any specifics away, is I was playing a character that's dealing with a very heightened situation, and somebody very close to them is more than likely dead. And the audition was that experience, like that heightened reality. And getting to that place and then living in that place, doing it multiple takes. I'm like, afterwards, Allie and I are watching the auditions, and I had this moment of like, isn't it weird that like this is what we want to do? Like
we want to put ourselves in these really like messed up emotional state of mind.
I want to imagine like what it would be like if my mom died right now and experiencing that. Like, I want to do that. Like, there's a part of me that is saying, yes, I want that. And it's a very, but it is true. Like we get off on this idea of like experiencing emotions on the highest heightened level, and the adrenaline and for me, I think it's also a component of compelling people to feel like wake up, like this is shit that we all go through. And I resonate with being a storyteller. I think that's where I am. If anything, I think I'm a storyteller, and I think you have that similar bone, could be especially through your songwriting. It's a good, I think, example that you did on Songland. It's a very clear moment of you working as a singer and then having your work be somebody else's. Can you talk me through what songwriting has been like? I guess you can use Songland or Songland. That's what it's called,
Songland.
right? Okay, Songland. What that experience was like, or what it is for you now as a songwriter, and what that and how that is a part of your life. Because I'm actually curious, like, do you write songs for yourself and then it's like, okay, this could work for somebody else? Does it always start with you? Can you just boil down your whole process?
For sure, yeah. Specifically for Songland, so I had just been writing at that point, you know, more so in like 2018 and 19. I was just writing a lot of music, and mostly for myself, stories that, you know, that I've gone through. And that's usually what I write all the time, because it's a form of therapy for me. And it just helps me like almost figure out what I'm feeling in that moment. And that's what it's always been for me. I never really considered myself a songwriter, because I'm like, whoa, like the idea of going into a room and like making something up and having to do it like that in front of other people, like for me, seemed a little scary, because I usually just wrote by myself. I didn't really collaborate with a lot of songwriters. I never had much of the opportunity to do that before Songland. And then Songland happened because of a song I wrote, again, in my room in 2019. I was listening to a lot of H.E.R. that at that time, I don't know if that was like a manifestation. I don't know how that happened, but wrong places, and didn't really think much of it. It was just another song that I had in my catalog, and I would play it. My father loved it, and I didn't want to do Songland. Miss Raquel Castro wanted me to do Songland, my mother, for those of you who don't know my mom. And she was like, it'll be a great idea. Like, it's the same people as The Voice, and this could be a really good platform for you. But at that point, I had just been through so much where I'm like, I am not ready to put myself out there like that again. Number one, don't consider myself a songwriter, and there's going to be people that really, really do this. I'm not ready. But she sent in my songs anyway. And a few months later, the casting contacted her. It was right before the holidays going into 2020. And they're like, hey, we want one of Raquel's songs. I didn't know which one it was yet. And right after the new year, January of 2020, I find out it's Wrong Places. And we start kind of doing all the paperwork on everything, and they flew me out to LA, and then there I found it was for H.E.R. And I'm like, this is crazy, because like
surreal.
I had been listening to her that whole the year prior to that. I was listening to her so much, and it was a really cool experience. And I didn't, you know, I always go into things thinking I'm not going to win, because I just don't know. I have learned to like set my expectations very low for them.
It sounds like you don't believe you're as talented as you are, which is a good thing to a degree.
It sounds so sad, but I just think it's what the industry does to you sometimes, where you're like, you never want to get your hopes up, because you just, the disappointment sucks. So I kind of had that mentality, but I'm like, you know what, whatever happens, happens. And I remember singing, and it was actually such a relaxing feeling in that kind of environment. And she ends up choosing the song, and I'll never forget the first time that she sang it was when I watched it live, like in the middle of COVID. I didn't hear anything after the show ended and they were doing all the editing. I didn't get anything. And after my episode, she came on and she started singing it with the acoustic guitar, and I just started crying because it was the first time I ever heard somebody like sing something that was so like personal to me and somebody that I loved. It wasn't just like anybody, it was somebody that I spent the last year obsessing over. So it was a really surreal moment. And that was something that really transitioned my brain again, where I'm like, oh, I can be a songwriter. I can do this. I love the idea of like sharing my story with somebody else's and relating and helping, like all of those things. So, obviously COVID was a really hard time to connect with anybody. So it was a
Sure.
weird,
What perfect timing.
yeah, perfect timing. It's like, here we are, the door opens and then COVID happens and everything changes. But
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that experience because it helped me take some of the limits off of what I was putting on myself. Like I would always felt, like you said, almost like I feel like I stop myself from doing so many things because I'm scared I won't be good enough or whatever it is. And that was a moment for me where it finally gave me some sort of validation. Like I was getting validation from H.E.R, who was multi-Grammy award-winning songwriter and producer and singer, and like somebody I grew up listening to. And it was just so crazy that like he told me behind the scenes, behind the camera, like, hey, I just want to let you know, I went on a run yesterday and I had your song on repeat for like a half hour, 40 minutes on my run. And he didn't have to say that to me. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And he did. And I'm like, wow, like that was really, I needed that at that point in my life. Cause I was very close to just throwing it all away and just like getting out of this industry completely before I did Songland. And that kept me going. So, and it's kind of transitioned to where I am right now.
Well, that performance that you had on Songland is so beautiful, and the judges, the people working, on that show, you can see that they are like, it's not bullshit,
Yeah.
that is some fucking real validation, and you are you're killing it. You are, and there's no mistake why your song got selected, and it's just, it makes me very happy to know, you go through all of these hard times and you never really know where you're going to end up and who's going to put your name in the ring, and then you're going to wind up doing something you never even imagined. What is the strategy now? Are you actively thinking strategically as a songwriter now and saying, I want to write for certain people, or are you just writing songs and then you're presenting them as like a package? Is there a strategy in place, or is that not something you're focused on just yet?
I'm sorry, my
It's all
ring
good.
keeps going off. I think that in the last 2 years specifically, like a little post COVID, once 2020 was over, I'd say from like the end of 2021 to now, I had a lot of time to really do a lot of soul searching. I've been living in Los Angeles again, and this is the longest I've been in LA since I'm 18 years old. So we're going on almost 3 years here. And I finally feel like I'm in a place where life is still chaotic, but it's almost like structured a little bit more. So it's
Yeah.
I'm very much back into the mindset of being an actor. And it took me a long time to get there. Like I would say for the last like 15 years, that was another part of my life where I would go into auditions. I don't even remember my performance. I don't remember my preparation. I don't remember like what I even said to these casting directors at some points, where I think I was just a zombie going into these rooms, and they probably felt that, and that's something that sits with me. And I'm like, what, like, God, I should have just stopped completely. But I feel like I'm in a place now where I had this wake up call, and I'm just like, I love music. I love songwriting. I just love being creative, and I want to be
Yeah.
successful doing what I love. That's my goal. Like I want to just wake up in the morning and know it's all good, and I have a path in front of me that I'm really focused on. And that for me first is acting. I really, really
Yeah.
want to conquer that, and I've accepted that, I'm 28 years old now, and I started when I was 4 years old. I've been in this my whole life, but I'm in a new chapter of my career. And there's something so refreshing about realizing I'm starting from the ground up again. I'm not starting from 7-year-old, 9-year-olds, Raquel that did a really, really cool movie with some cool people. Like
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that experience, but I've almost set my brain into like a clean slate mode where I want to take any opportunity I can and make the most of it. And so any opportunity that feels right. I wouldn't say any opportunity that I can, but any opportunity that
Yeah.
makes sense, I want to just go and follow that no matter how big or how small or how much it pays or how much it doesn't pay. Like I really
Yeah.
want to find that and lock in a place there. And then while I'm doing that, I'm also working as a child talent developmentor manager, I guess. I don't really know what my title. I'm
Yeah.
a her manager, but like I'm doing more than that. And I'm really passionate about that too. So like this is the path, and then that path kind of veers off a little bit. And then I'm also finally after like the last 2.5 years of just not looking to do an artist project, I'm finally releasing my own music again. And that's something that's really exciting and more so like a passion project for me. I'm doing it completely independent. I don't have a manager for that. I don't have a label. I don't have an investor. So I'm kind of just going at my own pace and doing what feels right and what makes me feel happy at the end of the day and experimenting. And that's really fun. And then in the same conversation, I'm also like writing with other artists that I really like. Some have become really good friends of mine and helping them like, develop their projects and, just, put my little touch on it. And that's been really
Yeah.
fun too. So like I said, I don't want to put all of my eggs in one basket because I think I love to do so many different things that I would be limiting myself if I did that. But I've just
Yeah.
tried to focus my energy a little bit more on like what I want and what I see for myself.
You're so inspiring, and you really are a hard worker, and you're talented too, which I know makes it a little bit harder because when you have talent in all these different things, it's hard to kind of sometimes just say, I'm only going to do this one thing when you're passionate about all these things. And I think that's why like people like you and me, because I'm writing, I'm acting, I'm voice acting, I'm doing, it's all these different, I'm working on, I'm meeting Guy tomorrow. Funny enough, we're thinking about doing another project right
You just
now.
texted me
So like,
before.
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe if you're going to meet up with him, are you going to
I
be
think I
seeing
might
him at any
grab coffee
point?
with him tomorrow before I go into work, and then I told him to come visit me at work if I can't do that.
Amazing. Okay. Well, if I'm with him, we'll both do that.
Okay.
So that's a good, yeah. So like, it's just so hard to sit and harness like a creative energy in one way. It's not the same way it was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, where it was kind of enough to just, just sit around and wait for the phone call to ring and pursue one thing. It's you have to be very talented. You have to be available. You have to be flexible. And I'm happy for you that you're finding stability within the chaos, because I think that's the perfect middle ground, is being open to all these things. And you should be showcasing your talent, no matter what the degree of Hollywood fame that the film might be, if it's an indie or if it's whatever it is, because you are so talented. I know you worked on a couple of things recently, a couple indie films that you did a musical one, correct? Right?
Yes.
And then you did a couple other projects, at least from what I saw on IMDb. Has that been rewarding to work on these projects and just to kind of like get your muscles flexed again in that way, especially post COVID, where none of us were doing anything?
Yeah. Oh my God. Especially, I mean, it was my first musical film that I've ever really done, and it's called Paradise. I did it March of last year, and they're shopping it around now. And we just got to see a screening of it a few months ago, which was so cool. And
Heck
it's like, I
yeah.
mean, in that I played a very lighthearted film, but my character was a stripper. And then she turns
Yes,
into
yes.
something else, and like, I don't want to give it all away, but it was such a fun role to play because it was my first like adult-esque role that felt like a real role. Like I've done things in the last few years, but nothing felt like it had substance. It was one of those things where it's like, I almost felt like I was just like a person standing in a room and it was just there, like the character didn't feel like meaty or like I could really put a lot of like energy into.
Yeah.
So Paradise was a lot of fun for me and I'm really excited. I hope that finds a really great home. And then the other film I did is going to be called One Day in America, and it's more of like a dramedy, I guess, because there's like some dark humor in there. And it really just takes place on one day in America. It follows a shooting that happened in the 90s in Boston, I believe. And we shot it in Boston. It was my first time there. And it was also another like adult role. She's she's a liberal. She's a feminist. She's very, very passionate about everything that she has to say. And she's not afraid to speak her mind. And that was really, really cool to kind of get into that area of me, because I'm also somebody that, like, if I believe in something, I'm not afraid to like give people my 2 cents. I had to find that voice, but I did. It was really, again, it was so much fun. And like, these are projects, like the writer director of that was a friend from years ago I met out here in LA when I was like 18 years old, and we just stayed in touch, and he just reached out to me one day and was like, hey, I think you would be great for this role. Are you interested? And I'm like, absolutely. Wow. So it worked out, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm just looking to do more of that. I just want to keep diving into different characters.
I can't wait to see both of those projects and whatever else you continue to do. I've known, I mean, granted, this is a separate tangent, but I've known you were talented even from like the writing in my head. Like I wrote literally a role that you'd play my sister because I knew how talented. I mean, Barbie Boy, we've talked about this before in that way, you know? So like I've known how talented you are, and I know you haven't had that. Maybe we're going to get pieces of it in these films, but I know there's a part of you that is yet to let you go off the leash a little bit. So I'm excited to see how that manifests, whether it's in these projects or more projects to come. It's a hard industry, and we don't really have all of the control to say what we want to do and when we want to do it. A great piece of advice I got from your mom was just, she always told me like to just say yes to things, like just do it. Like she always made me believe that. Like I would talk to her, especially when I was starting out, and I'd be like, I don't know if I should do this. I was getting a little too ahead of myself. I was trying to be like a business guy before I even did anything. And she's like, no, just do it. She's like, just do it.
She always
and
said
that really
to us
stuck
too.
with me.
She was like, you never know where it'll lead. You'll never know who could see you in that and call you for something else, or, you know, even auditioning. Like there's certain things where I'm like, I'm not right for this. She's like, yeah, but you can get in front of the casting director and they might remember you for something else. And so it's so
100%.
true. And that's why, like, for the most part, I think, you know, I definitely had moments where I was ahead of myself too. I was, because of the success I had when I was a kid, like it got to my head where I was like, well, I did this already. Like, I don't want to, like, you know, not go down, but it's such a terrible way to look at things. And that's something I wish I would have just been able to like slap myself in the head when I was a kid, because like every opportunity is a great opportunity. You know, there's obviously moments of like in your gut, you know, if something's right or wrong, but like you never know where it's going to take you. And I think just being a sponge in this industry, especially in the beginning, is so important. And just, it's almost like the wide-eyed like child. Like you have to just have to be grateful and excited and just open-minded.
I think you said it great before, where you're like, you know, you want to take every opportunity, the ones that feel right. You know, you're not just going to say yes to somebody. You know, well, who knows? There's a lot of people on Craigslist that want to make some weird films, and you know, no shade to that, and all the best luck to you. But I think it's a really hard, especially when you want to be taken seriously and you want to have validation to be like, because I've experienced this too in my life, where you've said, I've done this. Am I taking a step back? Do I need to say I can only work for this amount of money? Am I not willing to, you know, not get, a business class flight? Whatever the stupid stuff that we, as a business, because we want to sustain ourselves as artists and we want to make this a career and our livelihood, something that we're doing every day, and this is paying every single one of our bills. So you have to have standards, you have to know your worth, but you also don't want to pass out on opportunities. I don't know if I've said this story on this podcast before, but a friend of mine was a Columbia director, and he cast me in a short film that he had done when he was in Columbia MFA. And he went on, we made the short film. He went on to get that short film picked up to turn into a series by a network. And in between this, I'm getting a little bit of a big head at this point, where I'm getting, you know, and he had asked me to do something else at this point. And I'm not saying this is the reason why I didn't get it, because I still had gotten an audition when that other bigger project happened, but he had asked me at a point in time in the middle. I probably asked your mom for her advice on this at this point. He wanted me to do this project for a couple of days and it was no pay. And this is before I've really done anything. And I was like, well, I need to get paid. I didn't ask for much. I said like I needed like at least $100 a day or something, but he couldn't pay it. And that's a situation I look at all the time where I'm like, had I just said, no, I'll do it for no money, and I would have had a better relationship with all the people on that set that have gone on to do amazing things. And maybe he would have fought a little bit harder for me to do the series when it got picked up. I'm not saying that's the reason, but I always feel like if that could have been a reality, it's a good lesson to learn from, regardless of if that was the reality that I'm living in.
Absolutely. So, and I can trail off your story because I have a similar story that sticks with me.
Please.
So it'll make you feel less bad, or hopefully just feel understood, because I know the reason why I was saying that before is because I have one of those where I was living out here and I was like 18 or maybe 19, and I had, in the same like maybe 2-week span, I auditioned for a Disney show, and I also auditioned for a musical, The Heathers. And it was before they, like the very, very beginning of them developing this to bring it, like turn it into a musical and do all of that. And the director, I auditioned for The Heathers first, and I got a call back, and the director, Andy Fickman, was there. He is the sweetest man. I love him to death. He loved me, and I forget which character I auditioned for. I forget the name. But
one of the bullies or the main girl who runs off with the guy?
One of the Heather sisters or whatever.
Sure.
And he loved me, and we had this great energy in the room. I'll never forget it. And then my agent called me like a few days later, and I think they were interested in me for it, but they told me for the workshop or whatever it was no pay. And it was like a few weeks that I would have to dedicate to it. And I was just like, well, I need to get paid, like I need to do this.
Yeah.
And I ended up not doing that. And in the same time, I auditioned for this show, Liv and Maddie, on Disney. And Andy Fickman was the director. So I actually got the Disney show.
Yes, and you're phenomenal in that. And I want to talk to you about it. I'll put a pin in that, but go on.
What a fun character that was. And that's so cool because it brought me into like this fan base of these young kids. And I never did Disney growing up. But like that, it was so crazy. I only did 2 episodes on that series. I had like a little recurring guest star role. And like kids stopped me and they're like, "You're South Salamanca." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I am." Holy shit.
Apparently.
Yeah, apparently I am. And like, and I grew such a great relationship with Andy. But I have to say, there was also kids that were on the Liv and Maddie show that did the Heathers, and their careers started to do a lot after that. And like a lot of great people saw them in the Heathers and put them in other things. And I'm like, me and Andy still have a great relationship, and I still talk to him and his wife, and I love it. But I actually Instagram messaged him not too long ago, and I brought this up to him, and I said, "Hey, I have been doing some soul searching and just thinking back on things in my career. And one of my biggest regrets is not going through with Heathers. And I wish I would have done that. And I just want you to know that in my heart, I'm just so grateful that I still have the opportunity to work with you. And I hope one day I can continue that opportunity." And like, he like wrote back and he was so nice about it. But it was one of those things that I needed to get off of my chest because I'm like, oh, like I was so angry that I didn't take those opportunities because you never know where it could have taken you. And I feel like I've learned so many lessons, but I'm like, all right, God, I'm done with the lessons. Like, all right, I've learned, I'm here, I'm ready. Like what's happening? So it's definitely lessons I think we need to learn because it humbles us and it teaches us a lot of things about the industry and ourselves. But it's, sometimes just learn from other people's lessons and just take the opportunities.
I know. Well, that's what this is all about here, and that's why I love this podcast, because I wish, all I had was the people around me, and it was a very few amount of people. I mean, your mom was one of the biggest resources in my life to understand any of these things in this industry, and it's also, this industry is very conducive, and I'm not saying that you've experienced this, but I definitely have, where you have this like, it shouldn't be this way, but a lot of people have a baked-in competitiveness. Even if you're not even of the same, like, type, it's like there are people that don't want to see you succeed. That's a real thing because there's like an animosity about like, why isn't that me? And there's a bitterness to that. And it's hard to find people who really will champion you and be happy about what you're doing in the industry without them, like, if you're like in the same come up, to like just be like, I just need your support, like untethered from all the shit that each of us are doing. Like, be happy for me or not. And it's a real hard thing to do and learn. And I've had so many. Another one, and this will be very short here, is I had an opportunity to do, I was auditioning in final callbacks and everything for the Harry Potter musical, The Cursed Child, when I was in New York. Just did the whole thing, callbacks, movement callback. I did the trapeze training where they had a hook yip and then the harnesses and everything. I did everything, and they had asked me, they said, would you be willing to do the show in San Francisco? Because it was, you know, they were auditioning for understudies for Broadway, and they were also auditioning for San Francisco to play leads or understudies. And I was like, I don't want to do San Francisco or whatever, because in my head, I'm like, I'm going to be this big producer soon here in New York. You know, like I'm working on all these big projects I got in my mind, and I don't regret saying that, and I don't really know the capacity in which that played into them maybe or maybe not casting me, and who knows what would have came from that. But I think we try to direct our ship sometimes too much, and this is an industry where it's like, just get on the river and see what comes to you, and see what happens that way, instead of saying like, I'm going to do this. Because I remember when I was 24 years old, I said I was going to be Michael J. Fox and I was going to have my own sitcom at 24, you know? So it's so hard as an actor, unless you're creating your own stuff and you're doing that, to like dictate what it is. So long story short, saying yes to things that you don't know where they will take you or the relationships you'll make. I still, as I'm sure you have, as you just said with that film, people pop out who were, you know, PAs that are now producers. Exactly. You never know.
You never know. And I think this is an industry, where you really don't know what happens next. And even when you do know what's happening next, you don't know what's happening after that. And it's something that you almost have to go into it blindly. You have to just trust that this opportunity presented itself for a reason. And sometimes you just have to go with it. Like you said before, you made a great point. Like we hold on to too much control in an industry where we have zero control. So it's like, I'm very spiritual, and I believe in God, and I believe that, like, at the end of the day, like, I don't have any power. You know, there is a plan, there's an ultimate plan. And that, like, sometimes I laugh at myself because I'm just like, funny me or silly me for thinking like I was going to be able to like make this decision and it was going to happen. Like, you know, like we just don't live in a world like that. And so, yeah, you have to trust your instinct, but you also just have to sometimes just trust the path and just trust the journey and just go for it.
Yeah. I agree, and that's a great lesson for anybody listening. I want to take that pin out of the Liv and Maddie thing, because that was a moment where I got to see you be hysterical and uninhibited in a way that it's like that role kind of gave you the freedom to do that, and we don't always get those gifts in things that we do. Sometimes you're like the pawn piece, even though you have great performances down the line, like even in Blue Bloods, like you've done some really great stuff in very different capacities, but comedic-wise, you are... In a great way. You're chewing that scenery in just the right amount. You know, you're really is comedy. What is the thing for you that you want to be doing? Is it like, if you had your choice, would you do the Broadway musical? Would you do a serious film? Would you do a comedy? What is the thing that you think you'd want to do, and what is the thing that would like make you shine to show off a talent maybe that you've been working on or you think people haven't seen yet?
I think that, I love TV. I have to say, I would love, and I never really thought about it before because I started in like film, you know, I'm like, oh, movies. But I would love to just have a series regular role on like some sort of like comedy, rom-comedy, like TV show. And I feel like we spoke about this because I'm like, I don't know how others perceive me because I have so many different, layers in me. Like I love roles like the Blue Bloods role, like going into audition rooms and doing something that, like I said before, like really just you have to like just wear your heart on your sleeve and let it all out. Like I love that.
Yeah.
I love performances like that. But the other side of me is very like quirky and like weird and goofy, and not many people see that side of me. But when I have the opportunity to do that, it feels like I'm more myself than anything else. Like Zoe Deschanel in New Girl, like love her
Yeah.
in that. Like those type of like the tones of those type of shows I love. I love CW, but I heard CW is no longer going to be CW.
Wait,
I don't
what?
know.
They're getting rid of the
Somebody told me
CW?
like somebody's taking over CW, and I forgot what it's going to be, but it's like it's almost going to be like sci-fi or something.
Oh my
Don't quote me on
gosh.
this, but somebody told me this, I think like a few weeks ago at a headshot photo shoot. And I was just like,
Uh-huh.
CW has been on my vision board like for the last few years. Like I love CW. So
It's a whole genre of TV, and that's that style that I think you would thrive in, and how people perceive you. I don't know, maybe how you perceive yourself. We've probably talked about this to a degree, but you do have such, it's even like apparent in those interviews. Like that kid is still the same Raquel that you are today. Like that is your true form. This person who's just free and finding laughter and everything and being quirky, and you can still have, I think that's what makes it'd be the perfect character that is extremely quirky and free and fun, but has that switch where there can be a very serious person, and you have the capacity for all of that. So I'll be crossing my toes for that manifestation for you, because you would kill
thank
it.
you.
You would
I
kill
always
it.
used to be insecure about that in myself, especially like in the early teens, because you see so many celebrities nowadays that are very calm, cool, collected in their interviews, and they talk very soft, and their
Yes.
tones sound so great, like ASMR almost. And I was never that, like
Yeah.
I am so bubbly, and sometimes people are like, "Whoa, like who is this chick? Like, is she okay?" But I don't know. I have so much like energy, and I'm very passionate when I talk, and I'm very just like raw, I guess, still. Um,
Yeah.
and that's something I always used to be insecure about, because I was never like the hot girl, like I was never like the like Megan Fox, like very just sexual and like hot. And I always like wish, I'm like, dang, is something wrong with me? Like, but I just, what I learned as I got older, to embrace who I am and bring that into the characters that I can audition for and play. And even a manager that I started working with, like, she's like, "You're funny." And I'm like, "I am." Like, am I? Because I never, I was always like, I'm very like corny, my humor. So, and she's like, "But you're also very tough." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I am. That is me." Because I am very tough. I'm from New York. I have that like bite to me. I'm not going to act like somebody from Middle America would. So that's for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think growing up and learning to embrace who you are and learning how to bring that into characters has been something very helpful for me, because I always used to go into characters just trying to not be myself. And I think that you have to find the balance of like finding that person's story, but also bringing who you are at your core into that. So whoever's watching you really feels like that's who they're talking to.
Yeah, I think especially when we look at sides and auditions and we think about characters, we often think that they're looking for this, and that's why they write this huge long description of things. But the thing that's going to set you apart from everybody else is what you, in your life, in your experiences, that is not written on that page, the laugh that you do that may not be written into the script, that happens at a very weird time. But like, I don't know if I've talked about this on the show yet, and so anybody here, I apologize if I have. There's one of my favorite moments in all of TV is John Bernthal in The Walking Dead. Have you watched The Walking Dead at all?
Walking Dead.
All right, I'll try and make this as simple as possible. So there's a bunch of zombies. They wind up. He's a friend of the main guy. This whole tribe of people move to this farm, and one of these women has a little kid. Sophia. And at the end of the season, I'm spoiling it for you, so if you ever watch The Walking Dead season 2, at the end of it's going to be ruined. The little girl goes missing, and the mother of the little girl goes to John Bernthal's character. They're getting overrun by zombies, and they've been looking for this kid, and she's like, "But we gotta wait for Sophia." And John Bernthal has this moment where he's just like, he's laughing. He is laughing like beside himself, because the words that are being read on his that you can see him going through are, this fucking person thinks that her daughter is still fucking alive during this apocalypse. She's been gone. And that's not written into the script. You know what I mean? It's the way that somebody brings their experience of like, if somebody was this crazy to me, how would I react? And how can I bring that to, and that's what elevates these performances that I remember. Like, it's such a stupid thing to remember, but it has such an impact on me because it's those things in between the lines, the things that we bring that is not written on the page that we can interpret to be our own way that we want to do it, or we can build upon these performances that aren't written, and that's what makes when the casting directors or the producers or the directors look at it and they go, what is the thing that's different? What makes me lean in? What makes me say, oh, that was an interesting take. I didn't expect that. How is this actor I hire going to help enhance this writing and this project? Mm-hmm. Unless you're working with like Sorkin, and then you understand, like, stay on the, don't deviate from the material in any way or shape or form. But that's really good, and I hope that you do get to do more of these things that are close to you and that you will be able to rich and enhance from. I would love to ask you a question, especially, I was going to ask it back when we were talking about Christina Aguilera, but on this show I like to ask people about experiences in their life, and we've talked about a bunch already that you've had. And maybe it's something, maybe a piece of advice that she gave you or somebody gave you, or an experience that you had that had a really profound effect on you. One of the first ones that comes to your mind where, you know, it's like, oh, wow, I never really thought of things like that. Or when I had this friend tell me this, or when I had a fight with somebody. Like, is there an experience that you've had, professional or not, that had an impact on you that you think the experience of you going through it would be helpful for somebody maybe going through something similar?
I feel like I've had so many different like experiences. I'm trying to think of like something a little bit more recent when I'm an adult. I don't really, because a lot of like the things that I did like that, I was so young, so I don't remember much, but like. Yeah,
it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. Like, I recently went to, this is funny, this is the first thing that comes to my mind, so I'm just going to say it. Like, I recently went to Joshua Tree, and I'd been there before, and, you know, everyone talks about Joshua Tree being this, like, really magical and spiritual experience and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I had a moment, and I made everybody on this trip that I was with laugh. We're driving through the Joshua Tree Park and stuff, and I'm just looking out, and everyone in the car has got this feeling of like, oh, wow, you know, Josh, it's so beautiful. You know, U2 made a record about here, whatever. And I'm looking out and I'm like, it's like a junkyard for rocks. Like, that was like what I took from it. And I'm like, I didn't find this, everybody has their own ticks and quirks and what the things have impacted them. And to me, I kept feeling like I had to have this like spiritual connection to this place that people rave about. And I was like, it's just a junkyard full of rocks. Like, I'm not getting it. I'm not feeling it. It's not my vibe. And having the realization of being like, that's okay. I don't have to have like, you know, when people see movies and they're like, oh my God, it was life-changing. Mm-hmm. I don't need to say, I can be like, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I respect that you have that opinion, but it wasn't my vibe, and that's fine. It's okay with being that, and having this Joshua Tree experience just really kind of enhanced that feeling of like, you don't have to always follow the crowd. Mm-hmm. You can be your own thought. You can have your independent feelings about things that aren't like on brand with what the social narrative is.
I agree, and that's something I think I learned too recently, where like it's like be okay with the thoughts that are in your brain instead of trying to like make them into something like you would hear in a movie, or something that you thought it should have felt like or been like, or it should have happened in a certain way. Like, just be okay with your life and how it is. Look at things, and because it's not wrong, it's just how you feel. And going back to your question, I'm trying to think off the top of my head of advice somebody's given me, but I want to say like advice that I heard from just watching people that I respect and love. I started watching a lot of like table talks with like all of my favorite actors on the Vanity Fair channel and all of that. And Tom Hanks said one thing where he was talking with the table, and he said one of the best pieces of advice that he's been given is the quote, "This too shall pass." So if you're feeling really low and really just shitty, this too shall pass. And if you're also feeling like you're on top of the world and everything is going your way and this is how the world should work, this too shall pass. And I'm like, wow, that's so powerful. Because like I've always heard this too shall pass, but it's always like, oh, when you're going through something bad. But the knowledge of knowing that, listen, the bad and the good, it's the ebbs and flows of life. That really helped my brain just kind of settle, where I'm like, okay. And Robert De Niro kind of trailed off of something similar, where he said, you just got to be cool. You just got to be cool. Like if things are going your way, don't be like, yeah, like I'm this and I'm that, and start like acting like you're this like powerhouse and everyone should bow down to you, because that just shows like your lack of humility, and that can be taken away from you just as quick as it happened. So he's like, but and like even when it's bad, like you just got to stay even. You just got to stay cool within yourself. And I don't know if the term cool was actually used, but something similar, where no matter what, like don't get lost in like the chaos of this industry. Just move one foot in front of the other and keep going, and be grateful and be truly unapologetically yourself, and trust in your timing and trust in your path. And that's something that has actually stuck with me. So I don't know, I'm really bad with the whole like,
that's great.
Like what pops into your mind, but that's kind of what popped into my mind for my boys.
I think that's phenomenal, and it's so. It might sound simple, but it's like you said, when you think of it from both ends of the spectrum, like just being cool, number one, and just like it can pass. Like not everybody's going to be thinking about your audition that one day, and it's not going to be the thing that ruined you. People aren't sitting around holding grudges about you, and these one singular moments that we try to make like our life-changing opportunities, that doesn't define what our future is. And it made me think of another quote of somebody. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Brene Brown. She had a quote of saying, what if it all works out? Like when these things that we worry about, these things that we create, all this like, oh my God, this is so stressful. It's like, what if we make our minds think, what if that all works out? And you live in that for a second. What if it all works out?
If you spend the amount of energy that you put on like, what if it doesn't work out? And what if I did this wrong? Or what if I could have done better? And if you put that same amount of energy into the idea of what if it works out? Oh my God, I feel like your life could change.
I know. I still have a hard time with it, so I can't sit here and say that I'm the perfect person.
I gotta practice what we're trying to preach here, but it's something that like I wish I had more people telling me that on my journey of just like get out of your head and just focus on what you can do, because we really don't have much control. But what can you control? What could you get better at? What could you mentally practice to help you just stay sane in this industry? Yeah. And it's those things that we really need to remind ourselves.
Yeah. This has been I feel like I've learned more about you today than I have in our entire lives that we've known each other. This has been so amazing. Raquel, I'm so happy for you. I'm excited for you and all these projects coming up. I'm even more excited to see what comes next. I mean, Allie's been a fan of your music since, what was the song you did? You did a collab with someone. It was Young and Dumb. Am I saying the correct title?
Young and Dumb. Oh my God.
Allie listened to that all the time. And like, she would like do it thinking it would make me feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm like, I listen to it. It's a good song. Like, you know what I mean? She loved it. She still loves it. So I'm really excited for you. Other than the movies we've talked about, and I know you have some music, is there anything that you can or want to plug, or should people find you on social media, YouTube? What is the things that we can state right now that you are allowed to state?
I think more so the music stuff is more in my control. And I just released a single in January called Top Shelf. And it's a very fun, like underground New York City vibe. But following that, I'm going to be releasing more of like a chilled out love song. And then followed by that, I'm releasing an EP. So in the next few months, there's going to be a lot of new music coming out on Spotify. So you can find me on there. Stay tuned for those 2 new films. I don't have any I don't have much information on those as much yet, but that will be happening in the near future. And on social media, my Instagram is Raquel Castro, and that's kind of where I stay most current.
I love it. I love it. Raquel, thank you so much for doing this. This has been such a blast. I sincerely, all my love to you and everybody in the family, and maybe I'll see you. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I'll see you you soon. And
regardless,
thank you for having me on the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation and definitely needed it. So
heck yes, that's my gift to you.
Yeah,
All right,
baby.
Raquel, thank you so much. We will chat very, very soon.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later, pal.
She has such a history of her life and a great resolve of the realities of this industry. I'm envious of her resolve that she is creating now for herself, and it's inspiring to hear her talk about the way that she is kind of reinventing the way she looks at this industry. And I'm so happy that she's pursuing all these different things and she's killing it. Like she is one of the most talented people I know. And I'm not just saying that because she's my family. I really, really hope that you guys will check out her music on Spotify and all that great stuff. And the movies that are coming out, I think are going to be, she's done great things, but I think these are going to really showcase some really cool stuff. Thank you all once again for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, all that great stuff. Leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It helps more people see the show. And if you're interested in anything that I'm doing, you can go to paulcastrojr.com. I mentioned this in the beginning, but I'm offering some coaching and consultation for people interested in getting in the industry on a more intimate level. So you can go to paulcastrojr.com/coaching for that. You guys mean a lot to me. It's always fun. We've broken the 40 episode limit here, and who knows what the future's got in store, but I look forward to seeing you all on the next one.